"You're not welcome here on Mother's Day. We've got our own plans." I froze. I couldn't believe what Jessica had just said. It was supposed to be a celebration, a time for family to come together, but instead it felt like a knife to my heart. I had spent days preparing, cooking all of Mark's favorite dishes, decorating the house with fresh flowers, and making sure everything was perfect for our family gathering. I had dreamt of this day. After all, it had been a while since we all sat down together as a family. Mark was my pride and joy, and Jessica had always been like a daughter to me. At least I thought she was. But now, in the blink of an eye, everything I believed in came crashing down. I stood there in complete silence, trying to process what had just been thrown at me. Was I imagining this? Was this real? I turned to Mark, desperately searching for some sort of reassurance, but he wouldn't meet my gaze. He just sat there, his hands clenched tightly around his glass of wine, his face unreadable. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the sting of betrayal burning deep inside me. I had always been there for them, supporting them in every way I could. And now I was being told I wasn't welcome in my own home, in my own family. It wasn't just the words that hurt. It was the way Jessica said them so casually, like it was nothing. She had always been so sweet and charming when we first met. But now I saw her for what she truly was, cold and calculating. The realization hit me like a freight train. Was this how they really felt about me? Was I just an inconvenience to them, something to be pushed aside when it no longer suited them? The anger, the frustration, the disbelief, they all welled up inside me, but I kept it in check. I didn't want to make a scene, but I couldn't just let this slide. I had to say something. "Jessica, I've been here for you and Mark since the very beginning," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "And this is how you repay me? By throwing me out on a day that is supposed to be about honoring mothers." Jessica looked at me, her face hardening. "It's just a holiday, Helen. Don't make it more than it is." The words hit me like a slap. I wasn't sure if I could keep my composure, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this slide. I would find out what was really going on. But for now I took a deep breath and said, "Fine. I'll leave." I turned around and walked out of the room, my heart heavy, my mind racing. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I would find out the truth, and I would make sure they knew that no one could treat me like this and expect to get away with it. The days that followed felt like I was walking through a fog. I couldn't shake off the shock of what had happened. The words Jessica had said kept playing over and over in my head, and each time they did, the sting of them only grew stronger. I hadn't expected this. I had always been there for her and Mark, and yet now I was being cast aside like I didn't matter. The next morning I tried to keep busy, focusing on anything to distract myself from the ache in my chest. I cleaned the house, rearranged the furniture, even started a new knitting project. But nothing helped. The house felt emptier than ever. It felt wrong, as if the walls themselves were whispering about the betrayal that had taken place. I kept replaying the dinner in my mind, Mark's silence, Jessica's cold dismissal. I had been holding on to a family bond that didn't seem to exist anymore. That afternoon I received a call from my lawyer, a woman named Claire who had been helping me with some paperwork for years. I hadn't spoken to her in a while, but the sound of her voice gave me a small sense of comfort, like a lifeline in the storm of confusion. "Helen, I need to talk to you about something important," she said, her tone serious but kind. "I've been going over your financials, and there are some discrepancies I think you should be aware of." My heart skipped a beat. Discrepancies? What did she mean? I had always trusted Mark with everything: finances, decisions, the house. He had always taken care of everything for me. But now my stomach twisted as I thought about what could be happening behind the scenes. Claire's voice brought me back to the present. "There are accounts that Mark never mentioned to you. I've seen some documents, Helen, and they're raising some red flags. I think you need to come in and look at them." I felt a rush of panic, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "I'll be there this afternoon," I said, hanging up quickly. The drive to Claire's office felt like an eternity. My mind raced, questions swirling in my head. What had Mark been hiding from me? Why had Jessica acted the way she did? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something, some crucial piece of the puzzle. When I arrived at Claire's office, she greeted me with a warm smile, but there was a seriousness in her eyes that made my stomach turn. We sat down and she handed me a stack of papers. Helen, I don't know how to say this, but it looks like Mark has been siphoning money from your joint accounts. Small amounts at first, but it adds up. My blood ran cold as I scanned the papers in front of me. There were multiple transfers I didn't recognize, payments made to unknown accounts, and a strange withdrawal that seemed to coincide with the time Mark had been particularly distant. I felt a wave of nausea hit me as I realized what this meant. Mark had been hiding things from me for months, maybe even years. He had always told me everything was fine, that we were doing well. But now it seemed like he had been planning something I couldn't have anticipated. I looked up at Claire, my hands trembling. What do I do now? I whispered. Claire's expression softened. You need to make sure you have everything in order, Helen. You deserve to know the truth, and I'll help you figure this out. As I left her office, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation bearing down on me. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about Mark and Jessica, felt like a lie. I wasn't sure what to do next, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to sit idly by while they tore apart everything I had built. The following days were a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. The conversation with Claire haunted me. Every time I tried to go about my day, my mind would wander back to the financial documents, the hidden transfers, the unsettling thought that my own family might be scheming behind my back. I knew I had to take control of the situation, but it felt like I was stumbling in the dark, unsure of where to begin. That afternoon I called Mark. He was on his way home from work, and his voice was as calm and distant as always. Hi Mom, what's up? He asked. I hesitated before answering, trying to keep my voice steady. Mark, I need to talk to you about something important. I could hear him pause on the other end of the line. Sure, what's going on? His tone was casual, almost too casual. It's about the accounts. The money transfers. I need an explanation. There was a long silence before he responded. What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. His voice was tight, like he was trying to hide something. I felt a pang in my chest, but I pushed it aside. Mark, I've seen the paperwork. I know what's been happening. I could almost hear his breath catch. Mom, this isn't the time for this, he said, his voice strained. We'll talk about it later. Not now. My heart was racing, but I refused to back down. No, Mark, we're going to talk about it now. I deserve an explanation. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he sighed and I could hear him pacing. Okay, fine. I'll explain when I get home. But it's complicated, all right? The line went dead, and I was left standing there staring at my phone. I felt like my whole world was falling apart, and I didn't know how to fix it. That evening, when Mark finally came home, he walked in with his usual calm demeanor, but there was something different in his eyes. Something guarded. He didn't make eye contact, and I could tell he was trying to hide something. We sat down in the living room, and I waited for him to speak. I don't know how to explain this, Mom, he said, his voice low. It's not what you think. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What do you mean? Not what I think. I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I've been paying off some things. I didn't want to worry you. He was lying, I could see it in his eyes. This wasn't just about paying off debts. There was something else going on. I sat there feeling a chill run down my spine. My son, the person I had trusted more than anyone, had been hiding things from me. I didn't know if it was the pressure from Jessica or his own doing, but I couldn't ignore the fact that he had betrayed me. You've been hiding money from me, Mark. I don't know what you think you're doing, but I'm not going to sit by and let you destroy everything your father and I worked for. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his hands trembling slightly. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted to protect you, he said quietly. Protect me? I couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. If you really wanted to protect me, you wouldn't have kept me in the dark, Mark. You wouldn't have lied to me. The weight of his betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. The man I had raised, the son I had given everything for, had been making decisions behind my back that affected both of our futures. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. I'm done with this, Mark. I'm done being treated like I'm invisible in my own family. I walked away, not looking back. The silence between us was deafening. The days following my confrontation with Mark were some of the hardest I had ever faced. I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest, the feeling of betrayal hanging over me like a dark cloud. I had always tried to keep the peace, to hold the family together. But now everything felt like it was falling apart. The house, once full of laughter and warmth, now seemed like a cold and lonely place. I spent my days walking through rooms that once felt like home, but now felt unfamiliar, as if I no longer belonged. My thoughts were consumed with what Mark had said. He tried to justify his actions, telling me it was to protect me, but I couldn't understand. How could he think keeping secrets from me was protecting me? I had always trusted him. I had raised him to be honest and kind, but now I wasn't sure who he was anymore. And Jessica, his wife, had been so quiet throughout the whole ordeal, sitting in the background like a silent accomplice. She had never been close to me, but I never imagined she would be part of this betrayal. It wasn't just the money, though that was bad enough. It was the trust that had been shattered. The family I had built, the life I had given my all to, was slipping away. I didn't know who to turn to anymore. My friends had all moved away, and I had distanced myself from family after years of trying to keep the peace. I was alone. I couldn't ignore the fact that Mark and Jessica's behavior was becoming more distant. Their conversations were guarded, and I was always left out of the loop. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were talking behind my back, making decisions that would affect my life without even consulting me. One evening, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for them to come to their senses. I needed to take control to make sure my future was secure regardless of what they did. I called Claire, my lawyer, again. I told her I needed to look over all the paperwork, every document, every account that had been opened in my name. I wanted to know exactly what was going on. The next day, I met with her in her office. She handed me a thick stack of papers, each one filled with details I hadn't been aware of. As I scanned the documents, my heart sank. There were several accounts I had never seen before. Accounts that Mark had set up without telling me. Accounts that had been funded and in some cases emptied. I felt my hands tremble as I flipped through the papers. The more I saw, the more I realized how deep the deception went. Mark had been managing everything for years, and I had trusted him completely. But now I was left in the dark, with nothing but a pile of legal documents and a broken heart. I looked up at Claire, my voice barely a whisper. "What do I do now?" I asked. Claire's face softened as she spoke. "We'll figure this out. Helen, you don't have to go through this alone. But we need to act fast. You have rights and you need to protect them." I nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. It was time to stop being the passive observer in my own life. It was time to fight for what was mine. The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls, meetings, and frantic searching for any piece of information that could shed light on what was happening behind my back. I spent hours going through papers with Claire, carefully combing through every document she had gathered. I couldn't believe how easily Mark had hidden everything from me. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deeply he had deceived me. But something inside me refused to break. I wasn't going to let him win. One evening, as I sat in my kitchen, the reality of the situation hit me. The house, once filled with warmth and memories, now felt like a prison. Every corner reminded me of a past that seemed to be slipping away. Mark and Jessica had become strangers to me, and I couldn't understand why they had done this. I had given them everything: my time, my love, my trust. And this was how they repaid me. It was a hard pill to swallow. I thought about the years I had spent raising Mark, the sacrifices I had made to make sure he had everything he needed. I had put his needs before my own, and now it felt like all of that was worth nothing. I sat at the table, looking out the window at the empty street, lost in thought. The silence of the house was deafening, and for the first time in years I felt truly alone. But then a thought struck me. I had spent my life taking care of others, putting their needs before mine. Maybe it was time to take care of myself. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Mark and Jessica get away with this. I wasn't going to let them tear apart everything I had worked for. I stood up from the table, my resolve hardening. I called Claire the next morning, my voice steady. "It's time," I said. "We need to move forward with this. I want to take action." Claire's voice was filled with determination as she replied, "We'll get through this, Helen. We'll make sure you get what you deserve." I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. For the first time in days, I felt like I was in control again. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. I was going to fight for what was mine. The following week, I met with Claire again. This time, we were ready to make our move. She had gathered all the information we needed, and we sat down together to strategize. I couldn't help but feel a mix of nerves and determination. For years, I had been the quiet one, the one who always kept the peace, never rocking the boat. But now, I was fighting for my dignity, for the life I had built. "Helen, it's time to put the plan into action," Claire said, her tone firm but compassionate. "We need to make sure Mark and Jessica understand that they can't just walk all over you. You deserve more than this." Her words gave me a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in days. For so long I had swallowed my emotions, trying to protect the family I thought I knew. But I couldn't do it anymore. I had to stand up for myself. "What's the first step?" I asked, my voice steady despite the anxiety swirling inside me. Claire smiled reassuringly. "We'll start by filing for an injunction. We need to freeze any further transactions and make sure they can't move any more assets. We'll also make sure that the estate is properly divided, so you're not left with nothing." As she spoke, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't alone. I had someone on my side, someone who understood the pain I was going through, and I knew that we were going to take this fight all the way. Later that day, I went home, my mind racing with the plans Claire and I had made. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in my chest, but I also felt a spark of hope. Maybe this was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I would finally take control of my own life. When I arrived at the house, Mark was already there. He was sitting at the kitchen table, his eyes bloodshot, as if he hadn't slept in days. He didn't look at me when I walked in, and for a moment, the silence between us felt suffocating. "Helen, we need to talk," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I stood still, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. The moment I had been dreading. But I wasn't going to back down. "No, Mark," I said, my voice calm but unwavering. "I've already heard enough. I know what you've done." Mark looked up at me then, his face pale. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said quietly. "I was just trying to keep things together. I didn't think you needed to know." I shook my head slowly. "That's not your decision to make, Mark. You didn't think I needed to know? You think I wouldn't have wanted to be a part of everything?" The hurt in my voice was impossible to hide. He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "You've broken my trust," I continued. "You and Jessica both. But I'm not going to let you ruin me. I'm taking control of my life now, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." The tension in the room was palpable as Mark sat there, silent, processing my words. For the first time, I could see a flicker of regret in his eyes, but it was too late. I had made up my mind. This time I was going to fight back. The following days were a blur of legal documents, phone calls, and sleepless nights. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I had built was slipping away. And yet, for the first time in a long time, I was determined to make sure I didn't lose any more. I didn't know what Mark and Jessica were planning, but I wasn't going to let them tear apart everything I had spent years working for. Every time I passed through the house, I could feel the weight of the betrayal. The walls, once filled with laughter and family dinners, now felt like a reminder of what was being stolen from me. It wasn't just the money or the assets. It was the trust, the love, the respect that had been replaced by greed and deceit. The house had never felt so empty. Claire was helping me every step of the way, but the more we uncovered, the more I realized how far gone my family had become. Mark had hidden so much from me, things I never could have imagined. Jessica, too, had her role to play in this tangled web of lies. There were things I didn't want to believe, things I couldn't bring myself to accept. The thought of confronting them again made my stomach turn, but I knew it was necessary. I couldn't let them think they could walk all over me. One morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity. I wasn't just going to let this play out on their terms. I had spent my life playing by the rules, keeping the peace, but it was time for a change. I was going to fight back. I had a right to know what was going on in my own life. I called Claire, and we set a meeting to finalize our next steps. It was time to take action. As I prepared for the meeting, I noticed the quiet in the house. It was a stark contrast to the noise of my thoughts. I hadn't seen Mark in days, and Jessica had been unusually distant. I knew they were avoiding me, but the silence felt suffocating. When I met Claire later that afternoon, we went over the next steps. She laid out a strategy for how we could approach the situation legally. We were going to freeze the assets and take the first step toward making sure I had what I deserved. I was still scared, but I felt a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt in years. It was time to stop being the silent observer in my own life. I wasn't going to sit idly by while they took what was mine. As I left Claire's office, I felt a new resolve inside me. I wasn't just going to survive this, I was going to take back control of my life. I wasn't alone anymore. I had a plan and I was ready to see it through no matter how hard it might be. When I got home that evening, Mark was waiting for me. He was sitting at the kitchen table, looking like he had something to say. But when I walked in, he didn't say a word. I stood in the doorway for a moment, the tension in the air almost unbearable. Finally I spoke. "We need to talk," I said. He looked up, his expression guarded. "About what?" he asked, trying to sound nonchalant, but I could see the nervousness behind his eyes. "About everything, Mark," I said firmly. "You've been hiding things from me. I want to know the truth." He shifted in his seat, avoiding my gaze. "I don't think this is the right time, Mom," he muttered, clearly uncomfortable. But I wasn't backing down this time. "No, Mark," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "It's time for the truth. You can't keep running from this." The room grew silent as I waited for him to respond, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure how this conversation would go, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let him lie to me anymore. The silence in the room was unbearable. Mark sat across from me, his eyes darting nervously, trying to avoid my gaze. He wasn't used to this, to me demanding answers, and I could see that he was struggling. The guilt was written all over his face, even if he didn't say a word. I wasn't going to let him off easy this time. "Mark, I deserve to know the truth. All of it," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You've been hiding things from me for far too long." His hands clenched around the edge of his chair, and I could tell he was weighing his options. "Mom, I never meant for things to get this far," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought I was doing the right thing." I could feel my heart sinking as I listened to him speak. I had trusted him, believed in him, and now everything seemed like a lie. The right thing? Hiding money, making decisions behind my back. I asked, my voice cracking slightly with the hurt I felt. "How is that doing the right thing?" Mark's eyes filled with regret, but there was still something in them that didn't sit right. It wasn't just guilt. It was something else, something he wasn't saying. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mom," he said. I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Protecting me?" I repeated, disbelief in my voice. "By lying to me? By taking control of everything? That's not protecting me, Mark. That's manipulating me." He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and for a moment it seemed like he might finally speak the truth. But then, Jessica walked into the room, her presence instantly filling the space with tension. "Is everything okay in here?" she asked, her voice cool, almost too calm. I couldn't believe it. Of course she was involved. I had suspected for days, but now it was clear. They had been working together all along. "Jessica, I need you both to understand something," I said, standing up and facing them both. "I'm done being a passive observer in my own life. I'm taking control now. No more lies, no more secrets." Jessica's face hardened, but Mark looked conflicted, torn between guilt and frustration. "Mom, please, let's talk about this," Mark said, his voice tinged with desperation. "It's not what you think." I shook my head. "No, Mark. It's exactly what I think. And it's over." The finality in my voice surprised even me, but I wasn't going to back down. "I don't know what you think you're going to accomplish by doing this to me, but I'm not going to let you get away with it. I'm not going to let either of you destroy everything your father and I built." Mark's face fell, and Jessica's eyes narrowed with a coldness that sent a chill down my spine. But I didn't care. I was done being afraid. I had spent too many years in silence, too many years thinking I had to accept whatever came my way. Not anymore. "I've already taken the first steps," I said. "I'm taking legal action, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." The words hung in the air, and for a moment there was complete silence. But it wasn't the quiet of peace. It was the quiet before the storm. And I knew deep down that this was just the beginning. I had no idea where this would lead, but I was ready to fight for what was mine. As the weeks passed, I kept my distance from Mark and Jessica, allowing the legal process to unfold. There was a sense of quiet strength in me that had been growing ever since I decided to take control of my life. I didn't know how this was going to end, but I knew I had made the right choice. I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was standing up for the woman I had been, the mother I had always been, and the future I deserved. I began to see the changes in myself too. The fear that once paralyzed me had slowly turned into a quiet confidence. I spent more time doing the things I loved, gardening, reading, and even picking up old hobbies I had forgotten about. My friends had started to reach out again, and slowly my life began to feel fuller. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I received a call from Mark. His voice was different now, softer, more remorseful. "Mom," he said, his tone hesitant, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about everything, and I want to make things right." I could hear the sincerity in his voice, but I had learned the hard way not to be naive. "Mark," I replied, keeping my voice calm but firm, "it's going to take more than just words. It's going to take action. And trust." There was a long pause, and when he spoke again, I could hear the weight of regret in his voice. "I know, Mom. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to try. I'm sorry for everything I did. I let you down." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of his apology settle in. It wasn't easy to hear, but it was a step forward. "I'm willing to hear you out, Mark," I said, my voice softer now. "But it will take time." Over the following months, we worked through the mess together, with the help of the legal team and counseling. Slowly, the distance between Mark and me started to close. It wasn't a perfect journey. There were still moments of tension and unresolved issues, but we were moving forward. Jessica, too, seemed to soften, though it was clear she was struggling with the consequences of her actions. I didn't expect her to change overnight, but the first steps were taken. One evening, Mark and Jessica came over to visit, and for the first time in a long while I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the way things used to be, but it was something new, something better. As we sat together sharing a quiet dinner, I realized that while the past couldn't be erased, I was finally finding my way back to a life where I didn't have to keep hiding my feelings or accepting the scraps. I had stood up for myself, and while the road ahead was still uncertain, I knew I was no longer powerless. I had learned that the strength I was searching for was always inside me. I was healing not because of anyone else, but because I chose to take the first step toward reclaiming my life.